I got home 17 days early, which sounds more exciting than it was. The renovation project in New Orleans wrapped ahead of schedule because somebody finally approved the wiring replacement instead of arguing about it for another week. I signed the last inspection sheet, handed in my badge, and booked the first flight back to Charleston before anyone could find another hotel with a basement full of questionable decisions. I didn't tell Ruby. That part was intentional. For 7 months, I'd been coming home every few weeks, then leaving again before either of us had time to settle into a normal routine. This time, I wanted to show up with takeout, knock once on her door, and watch her pretend she wasn't happy to see me. It was close to 11 when I got to our building. Charleston was still warm in that late summer way, where the air felt like it had been sitting in somebody's bathroom after a shower. The porch lights along the street made everything look soft and yellow. I dragged my suitcase up the stairs quietly, which is difficult when one wheel has apparently developed a personal objection to smooth surfaces. The apartment was dark when I unlocked the door. Mostly dark. A lamp was on at the end of the hall, in my bedroom. I stood there for a second, with my hand still on the doorknob. Ruby had a spare key to my room for practical reasons. I traveled constantly, and she watered the plant I kept forgetting I owned. She also had access, because once, while I was gone, a pipe under my sink started leaking. She handled it before the downstairs neighbor had a reason to hate us. Still, the light made something in my chest tighten. I left my suitcase by the wall and walked down the hall. My door was halfway open. "Ruby," I said. She jumped so hard she nearly dropped the stack of envelopes in her hands. For a second, neither of us spoke. She was standing beside my bed in my old charcoal hoodie, the one I'd lost 3 months ago and assumed had vanished into the hotel laundry system. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, and she had that look she got after a long hospital shift, when she was awake only because her brain had forgotten how to turn itself off. My room looked better than I had left it. Fresh sheets, clean floor. The small pile of receipts I'd abandoned on my desk had been stacked into a neat square, which felt aggressive, but fair. On the dresser sat a small paper gift bag with blue tissue paper sticking out of the top, and across my comforter were letters. Dozens of them. Some were loose. Some were tied together with a thin piece of twine. Every envelope had a date written in Ruby's handwriting. She looked down at them, then back at me. "You're early," she said. "By 17 days. I know that now." Her voice had that dry edge she used when she was nervous. Usually, I enjoyed it. Right then, I mostly noticed how quickly she was trying to scoop the letters together. I stepped farther into the room. "Are those for me?" Ruby stopped moving. The silence got bigger. I'd inspected hotel kitchens with broken fire suppression systems that felt less tense than that bedroom. She pressed her lips together. "They weren't supposed to be here when you got home." That doesn't really answer the question. I know. I looked at the bed again. The dates covered most of the time I'd been working in New Orleans. 1 from April, 3 from May, more in June. The handwriting got smaller on some of them, like she'd been trying to fit too much into too little space. Then I saw one envelope near the pillow. My name was written across the front. Under it, in smaller letters, was a line that made my stomach drop. "Open this if Adam comes home and still thinks I am only his roommate." Ruby saw where I was looking and moved fast, grabbing it before I could reach for it. "Please don't," she said. I looked at her. She was holding the envelope against her chest now, like I'd tried to take something from her. I hadn't. So I nodded and stepped back. "Okay." Her eyes narrowed a little. "Okay? It's yours," I said. "You decide." The tension in her shoulders didn't disappear, but it shifted, like she'd been waiting for me to make the whole thing worse and hadn't planned for me not doing that. "I started writing because I didn't want to bother you," she said quietly. "You were working all day. Then you'd call me from some hotel room with terrible lighting, and I'd have 10 things I wanted to say. You never bothered me. I know you'd say that. It's true." She gave a small laugh, but she looked down at the letter in her hands. I'd write about normal stuff at first, she said. Things from home, your plant surviving, the neighbor's dog getting loose again. Then I'd start writing things I couldn't text without feeling stupid. You don't look stupid. That is not helpful. I'm trying. I can tell. That got a real smile out of her. Small, but real. I sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch the letters. Ruby stayed standing for another moment, then sat beside me. Not too close, not far enough to pretend there wasn't something happening. I looked at the welcome home bag on the dresser. You did all this? She shrugged. It was supposed to be a surprise. It is a surprise. Not the kind I had planned. No, I said. Probably not. The room went quiet again, but it felt different now. I thought about every night in New Orleans when I'd finished a long inspection and reached for my phone. I thought about the pictures Ruby sent me of sunsets from the hospital parking garage, the sticky notes she left on the fridge before I traveled, the way she always remembered when I had an early flight. I missed you, I said. Ruby looked at me carefully. You missed having a roommate. No. The word came out faster than I expected. I turned toward her. I missed you. Not the apartment. Not having somebody around. You. Her expression changed so slightly, I almost missed it. Then she said, Adam, I kept seeing things I wanted to tell you first. Stupid things. A hotel manager in Baton Rouge had a parrot that screamed every time someone said, inspection. I found a diner with coffee bad enough to qualify as a workplace hazard. I kept thinking you'd make fun of me for both. I would have. I know. She looked down, smiling again. Then she looked back at me, and there was no joke ready this time. I reached for her hand slowly enough that she could pull away. She didn't. Her fingers were warm from holding the letter. Mine were probably still cold from the airport. You don't have to explain everything tonight, I said. You don't have to let me read any of those. But I don't think you're only my roommate. Ruby took a breath. Then she leaned toward me. The first time we kissed, it was quiet. No big moment. No music. Just Ruby's hand tightening around mine while the letters waited on the bed beside us, holding months of things neither of us had known how to say. Ruby didn't pull away after we kissed. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that my bedroom still smelled faintly like clean laundry and whatever citrus spray she used when she decided a room had become a health concern. The letters were spread around us like evidence of a very organized emotional breakdown. I kept my hand in hers. Ruby looked at the envelope she had been holding, then at me. I should probably explain before you start thinking I'm secretly writing a memoir about our lease agreement. I was hoping there'd be at least one chapter about the dishwasher. There are two. That tracks. She let out a breath through her nose, but the joke didn't last long. Her thumb moved across my knuckles once, like she was checking whether I was still there. At first, the letters were stupid, she said. Not stupid, normal. I'd get home from work and think of something I wanted to tell you, but you were usually either inspecting some boiler room or trapped at one of those hotel dinners where everybody wears name tags. Those dinners are worse than boiler rooms. Exactly. So I'd write it down instead. She picked up a letter near the edge of the bed. The envelope had a date from April. I wrote one because your plant made a new leaf, she said. You'd been gone 6 days, and I was irrationally proud of myself for keeping it alive. It has survived longer under your care than mine. That's not the point. I know. Her face softened. Then it became things I couldn't say in a text, she continued. Stuff that would sound too serious if I sent it at midnight while you were in some unfamiliar hotel room. I'd tell myself I was just saving them for later. And later kept getting later. Pretty much. I looked at the stack of envelopes. 7 months of later. There were weeks I remembered clearly. The week I found exposed wiring above a banquet kitchen in Mobile. The week a hotel elevator in Lafayette made a sound like it was chewing rocks. The long stretch in New Orleans when I ate dinner from a paper container at my desk every night because I was too tired to find a real restaurant. Ruby had been there through all of it, even when she wasn't physically there. "What's one thing you wrote?" I asked. She gave me a look. "You're not supposed to ask that. I'm not asking you to read one. Just tell me something. One small thing." She hesitated. Then she picked a letter with a blue pen mark near the seal. "This one was after you called me from New Orleans," she said. "You were exhausted. You kept saying you were fine, which is how I knew you were definitely not fine. That is unfairly accurate. You said you had another inspection at 7 in the morning. Then you got quiet for a second. I probably fell asleep. You did. For maybe 5 seconds. Then you woke up and acted like nothing happened." I remembered that call. I had been sitting on the edge of a hotel bed with my work boots still on, talking to her because I didn't want the day to end yet. Ruby stared at the envelope. "I wrote that I wished I could sit beside you until you fell asleep," she said. "Not do anything dramatic. Just sit there. Make sure you actually rested for once." I didn't say anything immediately. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I did. "I wished that too," I told her. Her eyes lifted to mine. "I'd be in those rooms," I said, "and I'd think about how you'd tell me to take my shoes off before I ruined the bedspread. Then, you'd probably steal the good pillow and complain that hotel air conditioning is too loud. It is too loud. It is. And I would steal the good pillow. I know." She smiled, then looked scared of the smile. "That's the problem," she said quietly. "We know all these things about each other, but we never say what they mean." I understood that better than I wanted to. I had spent years being good at leaving, not in a dramatic way. I just got used to work that moved constantly. New property, new manager, new hotel room with a different carpet pattern and a different version of bad coffee. I could care about people without giving them enough of me to make the leaving complicated. Ruby made that harder. Not because she asked for too much. She almost never asked for anything. That was exactly why it got to me. "I don't want this to become an almost," she said. The room went still. She was looking at the letters now, not at me. "I can't do that thing where we kiss once, because you got home early, and everything feels bigger than it is. Then next week, you leave again, and we pretend it was just a weird night." It wasn't a weird night. It is a little weird. Okay, it's weird, but not because I don't mean it. Ruby finally looked over. I shifted closer, slow enough that she could stop me. "I know what temporary feels like," I said. "I live in it half the year. Temporary is a hotel key card. Temporary is unpacking one shirt because you know you'll be gone by Friday. Temporary is eating dinner alone because it's easier than learning a new place." She listened without interrupting. "This isn't that," I said. "You aren't that." Her eyes got bright, and she immediately looked annoyed with herself for it. "I don't need you to promise me every answer tonight," she said. "Good, because I'm terrible at speeches." That was almost a speech. I was under pressure. She laughed, and I felt some of the tightness leave the room. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ruby glanced at it. At first, she didn't move. It buzzed again. She reached for it, and I watched her expression change as she read the screen. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she turned the phone toward me. The message was from an unknown number. "You should have told him about the letter I mailed." Ruby stared at the screen like it had personally insulted her. A second message appeared before either of us spoke. "Tell Adam why you kept the return envelope." Ruby read the messages twice, like the wording might change if she gave it enough time. It didn't. I watched her face go blank in the way people do when they are trying not to let a feeling take over the room. Ruby dealt with real emergencies all night at the hospital. She could stay calm while families asked the same question 6 different ways. But this was different. This was personal, and somebody had reached into something she had tried to keep private. Do you know who it is? I asked. She set the phone down too carefully. I have a guess. That sounds like a yes. It sounds like my sister. I waited. Ruby rubbed both hands over her face, then leaned forward with her elbows on her knees. The charcoal hoodie sleeves covered most of her fingers. Shannon has this thing, she said. She thinks silence is always the worst choice. Sometimes she's right. Usually she's just loud about it. Did she mail one of the letters? I don't know. Ruby looked toward the bed. She came by in June while I was at work. I'd left a letter on the kitchen table because I was going to move it later. She asked about it, and I told her it was nothing. And she decided that answer wasn't good enough. Shannon has never met a boundary she didn't think needed improving. I nodded once. The phone buzzed again. Ruby picked it up, but this time she didn't show me right away. Her jaw tightened as she read. Finally, she said, it says, ask her why the envelope came back. I could have taken the phone. I could have started guessing where the message came from or how to prove it. I work in hotel safety. When something looks off, my whole brain wants to trace it to the source, write it down, and make sure nobody can ignore it. But Ruby wasn't a problem to solve. She was sitting beside me, upset because someone had taken a choice away from her. So I asked the only question that seemed useful. What do you need from me? She looked at me then. Really looked. For a few seconds, I thought she might tell me she needed space. I would have given it to her, even though every part of me wanted to stay close. Instead, she swallowed. I want you to stay beside me when I talk to her. Okay. And I want you to not say anything unless I ask you to. Okay. You're not even going to argue? I'm very good at following written procedures. That got a brief smile out of her. Ruby, I added, you tell me what support looks like. I'll do that. She typed one message with her thumbs moving fast. Come over. Now. Shannon replied almost immediately. That alone told us enough. While we waited, Ruby got up and started collecting letters from the bed. Not hiding them this time. Just stacking them in date order, pressing the corners into a straight line. I helped only when she handed me a pile. The apartment felt too quiet after that. The air conditioner clicked on. A car passed below the balcony. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor laughed at a television show, loud enough for the whole building to enjoy it against our will. 20 minutes later, someone knocked. Ruby stood near the front door, shoulders squared. She had changed out of my hoodie and into a soft green t-shirt and shorts, like she'd decided she needed to meet this as herself. I stayed a few feet behind her. Shannon walked in carrying a large envelope. She looked a lot like Ruby around the eyes, but where Ruby could hide a thought for a year, Shannon looked like she had never successfully hidden one for more than 30 seconds. The second she saw me, she stopped. Adam, she said. Shannon. Ruby didn't offer her water. That was how I knew she was angry. Shannon held up the envelope. I should have told you. Yes, Ruby said. You should have. Shannon looked down at it. I found a letter in June. It had Adam's name on it. You were working, and I thought you were going to let him leave again, without knowing. Ruby's voice stayed even. So you mailed it. Shannon nodded. To his New Orleans work address, she said. I found the project office online, but it got returned. The office had moved, I guess. I saw the return envelope and panicked. You hid it. I did. And then you started sending anonymous messages because you didn't know how to tell me. I thought you would get mad. I am mad. Shannon flinched, but Ruby didn't raise her voice. That somehow made it stronger. You found something private, Ruby said. You read it, mailed it without asking me, and then kept it from me when it came back. You decided my feelings needed to be handled on your schedule. I was trying to help. I know you were. Ruby's eyes shone, but she didn't look away. That doesn't make it okay. Shannon opened her mouth, then closed it. Ruby took one step closer. You don't get to choose when I say something important. You don't get to turn my feelings into a surprise for someone else because you think I'm taking too long. The front room went silent. Shannon's grip on the envelope loosened. I'm sorry, she said. I really am. I thought I was pushing you, to be honest. I didn't think about how it would feel for you. You didn't, Ruby said. Shannon nodded slowly. Then she looked at me, like she wanted backup or forgiveness or both. Ruby glanced over her shoulder at me. That was the signal. I kept my voice calm. Ruby gets to choose what belongs to Ruby. Shannon's eyes dropped. I know, she said. You're right. She handed the envelope to Ruby. I won't do anything like that again. Ruby took it, but didn't open it. Good, she said, because I need you to understand this isn't just about the letter. I do. I hope you do. Shannon stood there another moment, then gave Ruby a careful, uncertain hug. Ruby accepted it, but only briefly. When the door shut behind her, Ruby stayed still with the envelope in her hand. I didn't rush toward her. After a moment, she turned to me. I hate that I was scared to say all of that. You said it anyway. She exhaled. Then she looked down at the returned letter, the one she had never meant for me to receive. I think I'm done letting other people decide when I'm ready. Ruby stood in the middle of the living room with Shannon's returned envelope in one hand and my old hoodie folded over her other arm. For a minute, neither of us moved. Then she looked toward my bedroom. I had a whole plan, she said. That sounds dangerous. It was a good plan. I'm listening. She walked past me into my room and picked up the little welcome home bag from the dresser. The blue tissue paper had been bent over from whatever happened before I got there. This was supposed to be waiting for you when you came back on the 28th, she said. Not when you appeared in the hallway like a tired airport ghost. I did knock. You said my name from outside the door. That is not the same thing. Fair. She handed me the bag. It was heavier than it looked. Inside was a bag of the coffee I liked from the place near our apartment. The kind Ruby always claimed smelled like burnt toast, but somehow kept buying for me anyway. Write in the comments, what kind of coffee do you usually buy? Dark roast, light roast, flavored, or something else? Under that were a pair of new work gloves, the expensive kind with reinforced palms. I looked at her. You got me gloves? The last pair had a hole in the thumb. They still worked. You also said that about your suitcase wheel. My suitcase wheel is hanging in there. It sounds like a grocery cart being punished. I kept digging through the bag. There was a printed photo from a rooftop movie night we'd gone to before my New Orleans assignment started. Ruby was in the foreground, holding a paper cup and looking toward the screen. I was behind her, half cut out of the picture because apparently I had been trying to avoid being photographed. On the back, she had written, "You looked happy here. I like that." I read it twice. Then I found a folded list. Charleston places Adam has missed while pretending hotel food is acceptable. The list had 23 places on it. Outdoor cafes, a breakfast spot near the market, the seafood place with the uneven patio chairs, the taco stand where Ruby always ordered too much, and then acted surprised. At the bottom she had added, "Stop saying you're only home for a few days." That one made me smile. Then I reached the last thing in the bag. 2 baseball tickets. 2. I looked at the date. 3 weeks away. Ruby was watching me closely now, like she was waiting to see whether I thought it was sweet or embarrassing. I bought those before you came back, she said. I thought maybe I'd ask you to go with me. Like a date. Then I decided I probably didn't have the right to call it that. I held up the tickets. You had the right. Her eyes moved to mine. You were never too much, Ruby. She looked away for half a second, and I knew that sentence had landed harder than I meant it to. I stepped closer. I'm not saying we suddenly know exactly how this works, I said. I still travel. You still work nights. I still forget to eat meals that require more than removing a lid. You do, but I want to figure it out with you. Out loud. Ruby nodded slowly. No more important fear goes into a letter first, she said. I smiled. That sounds like a rule. It is a rule. Do we get to keep the letters? Yes. She looked toward the stack on the bed. I think so. Good. They seem important. They are. I reached for her hand. Then tonight is our first date. Ruby shook her head. No. Tonight is way too messy to count as a first date. Okay. Date 0. She thought about it. Then her mouth curved into a smile. Date 0. We ordered shrimp and grits from the place around the corner because neither of us had the energy to cook. By the time it arrived, the apartment had settled into its normal noises again. The air conditioner, the refrigerator humming, someone upstairs dragging furniture at midnight for reasons I would never understand. We ate standing at the kitchen counter because the table was covered with Ruby's mail, my travel receipts, and a small stack of letters neither of us had decided where to put. Ruby took one bite of shrimp and grits and made a face. What? I asked. This is not as good as I remembered. You were the one who picked it. I was emotional. My judgment was compromised. That is a serious accusation against a restaurant. She leaned her hip against the counter. You know what I hate? Baseball? I do hate baseball, but that isn't what I mean. I waited. I hate that I spent so long thinking, wanting something would make me difficult. I put my fork down. Ruby looked at the apartment around us, like she had to keep her eyes moving to say it. I kept telling myself I was being reasonable. You traveled. You had work. You didn't ask for anything. So I decided I shouldn't either. You could have asked me. I know that now. I nodded. And I could have said something too, I told her. I kept acting like leaving was easier when nobody expected much from me. Ruby gave me a small look. That sounds lonely. It was. She reached across the counter and took my hand. We didn't make promises about every trip or every bad week ahead. We didn't try to turn one night into a complete plan for the rest of our lives. We just stood there with half-finished food between us, holding hands in our kitchen. 3 weeks later, we went to the baseball game. The stadium was warm and bright under the lights, full of families, kids with foam fingers, and people who seemed deeply invested in a game they had probably explained to somebody 6 times already. Ruby wore a sleeveless yellow top and complained about the heat before we even found our seats. You know baseball has too much standing around, she said. That is not how baseball works. It looks like everyone is waiting for a bus. You're missing the strategy. I'm sure I am. I tried explaining the rules. Badly. On purpose. By the 5th inning, Ruby was laughing because I had described a double play as a very efficient group decision. She leaned against my shoulder when the crowd got loud. I pretended not to notice how much I liked that. During the 7th inning stretch, she slipped her hand into mine. You know, she said watching the field, I wrote all those letters because I thought waiting quietly was safer. I looked at her. And now? She turned toward me, smiling. Now, I'd rather tell you things while you're here. So I kissed her beneath the stadium lights, while the crowd cheered for something neither of us had been watching.